Please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of witness Kang Gik-il alias Dutch. Ms. Jia Su-Huang, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals to today's proceedings. Gracias. Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to this case are present. Mr. Nuji is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to continue his testimony today, that is Mr. Kang Gik-il alias Dutch, is present in the courtroom. Thank you. President, thank you, Ms. Jia Su-Huang. The chamber now decides on the request by Nuon Jia. The chamber had received a waiver from Nuon Jia, dated 22nd June 2016, which states that due to his health, that is headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his right to be present at the 22nd June 2016 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nuon Jia by the duty doctor for the accused at the ECCC, dated 22nd June 2016, which notes that Nuon Jia has back pain when he sits for long, and recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Nuon Jia his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via an audio-visual means. The chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Nuon Jia can follow. That applies for the whole day. And the chamber now hands the floor to the defense counsel for Khieu Samphan to put questions to witness Kang Gik-il alias Dutch.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Mr. Kang Gik-il. My name is Anta Gise, and I am the international co-counsel for Mr. Khieu Samphan, and it is in this capacity that I'm going to put a few complementary questions to you. I know that you speak perfect French, so, however, I'm going to ask you to mark a small pause between my questions and your answers so that your answers may be properly translated. And again, for purposes of interpretation, I'm going to ask you please to speak relatively slowly so that I'm sure that I don't miss out on anything. And I also, as an introduction, would like to tell you that I noted that you conducted quite a bit of research on the DK period since your detention, and on the base of the elements that you received during your trial. But what I would like to focus on is on what you knew during the DK period. So I'd like you to keep that in mind when you answer my questions. And my last recommendation, if one of my questions is not clear, please do not hesitate to ask me to put it to you again. My first question is the following. During the DK period, were you a member of the Standing Committee?
Mr. President, I was far and I was much lower from the Standing Committee.
Avez-vous
were you invited to a meeting of the standing committee during the DK period?
No, nobody ever invited me to attend the standing committee meeting.
Pendant la période
During the DK period, were you a member of the Central Committee?
No, I did not become a member of the Central Committee yet.
And during the DK period, were you ever invited to a meeting of the Central Committee?
No, I was not.
toujours pendant
During the DK period again, were you a member of a zone committee or of a sector committee, or were you in charge of a zone or of a sector committee?
No, I was not.
entre
Between 75 and 79, is it true that the gist of your activity was to act as a deputy chief and then as the chief of S21?
Yes, that is correct.
je voudrais donc
Now I would like to focus, therefore, on your work at S21. And you said on 20 June to my colleague Victor Koppe that you say that S21 left the PJ to go to the Ponyayat High School after the arrest of Ying Sambat and before the arrest of Chong Chakray. So that I understand your testimony properly, that is to say between 4 April and 19 May 1976.
Based on my recollection, Ho interrogated Jim Sambat at the PJ prison. As for Chan Chakray, he was interrogated at the Punyayat school. It was at a house to the south of the school campus.
Now I'd like to focus on the move to the Ponyayat High School, and I understood from your testimony that you are the person who chose that site. Did I understand you properly?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you explain to the chamber why you chose that specific location?
The interrogation facility of S21 was initially at the location behind the Punyayat school. It was next to Street 163. And after that, the facility was still in use. However, I observed that it was rather difficult to defend that location, and for that, then we made a request to use the Punyayat school, and the houses to the south of the Punyayat school campus was used for the purpose of interrogation. And I made that request to use the Punyayat school to Son Sen, and he approved that. So prisoners were then moved, and the interrogation was carried out outside of the campus.
So if I understood the reason for you choosing that location, it was because of security reasons. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Several witnesses who worked at S21 came to testify before this chamber, and they described the S21 site, and indeed there is the high school itself, which you just spoke about, but they also spoke about a fence, a zinc fence that surrounded the location as a kind of security perimeter. So does that correspond to your recollections? And my question is, are you the one who requested to build such a security perimeter with this zinc fence?
That is the initiation by Comrade Ho. And allow me to clarify that in the past, some division commanders actually use a zinc fence to as their gate for their barracks. Later on, General Staff instructed those divisions to remove the zinc fence. As for S21, I told my superior not to remove it. And I spoke to Ho to use zinc fence to surround the S21, and that was approved by Son Sen.
At the hearing of 26 April 2016, Lac Mien, a little after 1:49 and 58 seconds in the afternoon, described the placing of this fence in the following way. He said that there was another zinc fence that separated the main building from the interrogation places. 50 meters from the prison compound, there was a zinc fence, and we could move about freely within the prison compound. The interrogators who were posted outside of the fence would interrogate the prisoners in the building located in front of the prison entrance. End of quote. So my question is the following. Does that correspond to your recollections? And are we indeed speaking about a 50-meter security perimeter that surrounded the Punyayat High School?
First, I'd like to say that I do not, I wish not to recognize the statement of Lac Mien. As for the fence was erected with zinc, and the houses of the interrogators were inside the compound within the perimeter of the zinc fence. The Punyayat High School did not have a proper fence, and there was an adjacent road to it. Then there were 2 rows of houses where interrogators resided, but later on, interrogators also lived in the compound, that is, inside one of the buildings of the Punyayat High School. And that's what happens to the fence. So later on, as I said, interrogators also lived within the same campus as that of the prisoners. As for the medical facility, it was located outside the fence.
I understand that you challenge Lac Mien's testimony, but however, with regard to that 50-meter distance, do you indeed remember that the zinc fence was 50 meters away from the prison compound?
Of course, I do not recognize, I do not wish to acknowledge the statement by Lac Mien.
So, therefore, how far was the zinc fence from the prison compound, according to your recollection, if you do not accept what Lac Mien testified?
The fence was only to the north and the west. To the west, it was adjacent to a road running in front of the school campus. As to the north directions, the fence was a little bit further. It actually passed a row of houses, and it was probably adjacent to Street 350.
Now, a last try with regard to the distance. So, are you able to assess that distance, or you don't remember?
The Tools Line Primary School and the Punyayat High School were adjacent to one another. Punyayat was to the east, and behind it was the Tools Line Primary School. And during the Samdech Sihanouk regime, it was called Antara Devi School. And actually that school was facing my workshop. And of course I refer to this former Antara Devi school. And as I stated, to the north, the fence was erected beyond a row of houses, and I could say it was adjacent to Street 350, and you may say the distance was about 50 meters away. And allow me to say that the fence was not erected all around the campus, because the house where Mom Nai resided was further to the north of the Suez Canal. As for my house, it was on the side of the Munivong Boulevard, and there was no fence erected between that and the school campus. President, you talked about Mom Nai's houses, or Mom Nai's was located to the north of the Suez Canal. That seems to be not appropriate. Witness, the house where Mom Nai resided and also used it for the interrogation of the Yuan people was to the west of the Suez Canal, and it was opposite the house where photographers resided.
And last point now regarding the setup of S-21. Do you remember if there was barbed wire above the zinc fence?
I do not recall if there was any barbed wire. However, in the Ratipant movie, I saw the barbed wire used surrounding the buildings of the Punyayat High School. I went to the workshop once and I did not notice any barbed wire. I also went to the medical facility once.
À l'audience.
At the hearing of 2 May 2016, witness Prak Khan, a little before 10:38 and 58 seconds, said there was another fence, a zinc fence, and the second fence was covered with barbed wire, and there was a gate before the fire brigade. So does this refresh your memory beyond Ritipan's film, which was shot way afterwards?
I did not know the current location of the fire station. As for the Beehive radio station, it was there, and as I stated yesterday, it was along Street 95, that is running from the north to the south, and 360 was crossing it in between. And there was a fence where S21 guard was posted there, so no one, if someone had no authority, the person would deny entry into the compound. And there was no fence behind the house where we received prisoners, and I cannot recall the exact location of the fire station.
You just said that the people who were not allowed couldn't cross the fence, and you also said earlier that the reason you chose that location was to guarantee its security. Are these choices and these security measures connected to the secrecy principle and to the secrecy of your work at S21?
The erection of fences served two purposes. The first was to prevent prisoners from escape. Second was to stop any person encroaching or trespassing the area. So, as when the one staff never did their work outside the perimeter of the compound, and allow me to expand it a bit further. When Chinese performers came to Cambodia, everyone came to see it, but not S21 staffers. And children from Leang who came to work at S21 never knew where the riverside in front of the Royal Palace was located, because they always stayed inside the compound. And even if the film showing the visit by Pol Pot to China and Korea, it was seen by everyone except staffers from S21, and for that reason I requested the two films to be shown at S21. So S21 staff worked within the perimeter of the compound. Nobody would want to make contact with us, and we were not allowed to make contact with outsiders. And that was the purpose of the security for S21 compound.
Now, with regard to the same subject again, before this chamber, we heard people who belong to several units, such as the interrogator unit, such as the guard unit. And I'd like to know if, as the head of S21, provided recommendations or guidelines to make sure that people in different units would not speak about their work to each other. Are these guidelines that you gave?
A slogan used during the time under the administration of CPK was that you know your work, they know their work, and we knew it by heart. Interrogators did not dare to leak information to anyone. And I can give an example in the case of Comrade Ho. Ho read the confession of a prisoner, and then Pum was implicated. He was afraid, so he sought advice from Son Sen, and Son Sen said Brother Pum did not betray Ong Ka. But then he called me to not allow Ho to read any confessions anymore. So in summary, during the time we learned by heart of the phrase that we know our work, they know theirs. And that was the discipline of the CPK. We know about our work, and they know about their work.
And you yourself, did you follow this principle?
If Chief of S21 and Chief of M13 did not practice the principle, then he would have been beheaded long time ago.
So, therefore, I conclude that your answer is yes. Yes, you did follow this principle of secrecy and of focusing on your work.
Yes, that is correct. And allow me to add the following regarding the confessions of prisoners at S21. And at the time we call them the confessions of the enemy. I had the authority only to report to and to present it to my immediate supervisor, that is Son Sen, and later on to Uncle Noon. And later on, Pong came in his capacity as a spokesman for the center, that is for Brother Paul. And that was the time that I could provide some report to him regarding the confessions of prisoners at S21. And if I did not maintain the principle of secrecy, then when Pong came to supervise me, then Pong would see the confessions that implicated him. So, Pong took confessions from S21 that implicated him, and he gave them through the center, and as a result, later on, Pong was arrested, and Brother Noon called me to tell me about that. So my response may be a little bit over the limit of the content of your question.
Effectivement, Monsieur le témoin.
Indeed, Mr. Witness, we've dealt with a number of subjects. I'm trying to place them under specific topics so that the questions should follow a certain order. So when you answer my questions, please limit yourself to my questions, and when you will have the opportunity, you can elaborate further subsequently. I would like us to now talk about your work at S21. Over the past 2 days of hearings, I have understood that a major part of your work was done in your office, and it basically consisted in reading confessions and possibly putting annotations on them before sending them to your superiors. My question to you now is as follows. In terms of percentage, can you assess the amount of time you spent on that work? Was it 50%, 80%? Can you tell the chamber what percentage of your time was devoted to such work?
I could say that it was 90%. As for the miscellaneous affairs, they usually came to see me, namely Comrade Ho. So I remained in my office most of the time, that is about 90%.
Et les 10 autres % du temps.
And what did you do during the remaining 10% of your time?
From mid-March 1976 to 7 January 1979, my work situation changed. It changed from the time that Ngaju alias Hong was arrested and sent to S21. From that time onward, I was a bit terrified. Then mass arrests started to happen. I was hopeless at the time, so I spent my time at the workshop, chit-chatting with the sculpture. And lastly, I was so exhausted, so I spent time sleeping at my house on the 3rd and 4th, the same year. So 10% I spent, 10% of my time I was spent doing the work that I described, and 90 or more than 90% was the time that I remained in my office.
Je voudrais une précision.
I would like you to clarify something. You stated that at a point in time you spent the time sleeping. That was from the 3rd to the 4th of January 1979. I would like to know whether your work up to the 3rd and 4th of January 1979 remained the same, considering that you said your work varied at a point in time. When did your work vary? can you give us an idea in terms of dates?
Mr. President, Council, I would like to make a clarification as follows. It was from mid-March 1976 when I became chief of S21. Initially, there was much work to do. I was overwhelmed by the work at S21. And later on, I was still overwhelmed by S21 work. However, from 27 April 1977, that was the time when I had a child. My wife was working at a military hospital, the former Braccato Military Hospital. At 3 or 4 p.m., I called Comrade Long, the one who was in charge of telephones office of Son Sen, telling him that I wanted to see my child, and I was warned not to go too frequently. So from that time, after I had the child, I did not spend much time reading documents, but I spent much time playing with my child and also visiting my wife. And I was warned by Sun Sen not to do that so lazily or frequently. And after the arrest of Ngai Du alias Hong, I was so hopeless, and at the time not much work was required. I was not required to do much work. Sometimes I spent time reading Sam Kok story or the Three Kingdom story. I had a summary book and I wanted to know how the regime was controlled. And after reading the Three Kingdoms, the reasons were realized by me how to control the regime. So what I'm explaining you here is that during the time I did not spend time reading documents.
Excuse me, witness.
Alors, je vais essayer de poser ma question autrement.
I will rephrase my question, and I really would request you to avoid long elaborations and to focus on my question. I have understood from your long answer that at the beginning of your work at S21 you were overwhelmed, and you said that the first change was on the 27th of April 1977 when your child was born. So what is of relevance to me is the mid-March 1976 to the 27th of April 1977. During that period, you have pointed out that you were overwhelmed by work. How frequently did you leave S21 before the birth of your child?
I thank you very much, Council. Concerning times that I spent outside, yes, I went outside, but not frequently before I had the first child. I went out, it was because my superior invited me to work with him. And I pointed the map, the place where I went to work. That was to the north of Borei Keila, and perhaps Council has seen the map. I went to Hawk's residence to have something with him once in every 4, 10 or a month. And at the time, they had Qingdao beers to drink. So I went to his house, Hawk's house, to have meal and have a drink. And I had to inform my superior about that. So the time that I spent out was the fact that I went to work with my superior, and the time that I spent at Hawk's house.
Ça, c'est entre mars.
And that was between March 1976 and April 1977. My first question, in light of what you have just stated, and you stated that on each occasion, whether it was at the invitation of your superior or an order from your superior to go and see him, or when you had to go and have a drink in Hawk's home, does that mean that whenever you went out, your superior was necessarily informed?
Mr. President, I think I have told that very clearly. My superior, I am referring to Sun Sen, called me to work with him. And I also visited Hawk's house, the comrade that taught me in the past period. And I, in fact, asked the permission to visit Hawk's house from my superior. I never went out without any permission.
Donc ça, c'était de mars.
So that was from March 1976 to the 27th of April 1977. After the 27th of April 1977, did you ever leave without the authorization of your superior?
I made a clarification already. My wife delivered the child at a hospital, and I asked the permissions from my superior through Long, the telephone operator, and I told him to convey the permission to my request to the superior that I needed to visit my child and wife at the hospital.
Si je comprends bien.
If I understand your answer correctly, on the 27th of April 1977 to the 7th of January 1979, regardless of the number of times you went out, you always had to refer to your superior. Is that correct?
All the time that I had to inform my superior. I had to inform my superiors from 15 August 1975 up to the end. I had to inform my superior all the time. And before October 1975, my immediate supervisor was Nat, so I had to inform him whenever I went anywhere. And after that time, I still inform Nat about my trips. And after I became chief of S21, I had to inform my superior above as well through Long, Comrade Long.
Ces déplacements étaient cependant limités, n'est-ce pas?
Those outings were nevertheless limited, isn't that correct?
Yes, I had to make my outings, or I had to go out under the strict disciplines.
À part lorsque vous vous rendiez voir votre supérieur.
Except when you had to go and see your superior, when you had to visit Hawk, and whenever you had to visit your wife after the birth of your child. Where else did you go between the 17th of April 1975 and the 7th of January 1979?
Mr. President, first I would like to make a correction. The date is not 17 April. It is 27 April 1977. The 17 April was the celebration of the victory. I went out. I went, for example, to Kampong Saum under the order or instruction to see the bodies were floating and got stuck at the pier. So if I received no instructions, I had to remain at my office, and there was a trip that I had to go to see when an enemy fled the prison, and for the rest of time I did not go out.
À l'audience du 13 juin.
At the hearing of the 13th of June 2016, shortly after 15 hours 56 and 51 seconds, he referred to visits to the Ministry of Commerce. How many times did you go to the Ministry of Commerce?
To my recollection, I made one trip to Ministry of Commerce. Pang asked me to go to see Red with him. That was only one trip. It was at night time, and I rested on the floor while Pang and Red were in conversation.
Donc vous y êtes allé une fois.
So you went there once. Do you recall at what time that visit took place? I mean, in what year?
I do not recall that, because the year. Pang, the messenger of Brother Paul, asked me to accompany him to Red's office.
Sans vous souvenir de l'année exacte.
Although you do not recall the exact year, had you already been appointed head of S21, or you are still deputy head of S21?
I can recall that after the question was put to me, after 15 August 1978, when Sun Sen went to the front, Nguyen assigned Pang to come and supervise me at S21. So Pang was my immediate supervisor. That is clear. Pang at the time asked me to accompany him. It was after 15 August 1978.
Donc pour être sûr, parce que moi dans...
To be sure, since in the draft of the 13th of June 2016, I read the following sentence in French, and you are referring to the Ministry of Commerce. I regularly went to the ministry. So if I understood you correctly, you did not go there regularly, you only went there once. Is that correct?
I made the only trip with Pang because Pang asked me to accompany him. So it was not a regular trip.
Et vous situez cette date?
And you stated that that was after the 15th of August 1978. During the period when Pang was your immediate supervisor, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. President. President, Judge Lavagne, you may proceed. Perhaps you want to clarify the date. Judge Lavagne, you may proceed.
Oui, c'est par rapport à cette date du...
It has to do with the 15th of August 1978. The witness said that was the date when Son Sen went to the front, and then you talked of the 15th of August 1977. Can you clarify whether the year is 1978 or 1977? Counsel Gise, I heard the witness's answer, and I'll respond. He was not referring to the time when Son Sen went to the front, but the period when Son Sen was no longer there, but I'll ask him to clarify the matter. Witness, can you clarify whether the visit to the Minister of Commerce with Pang was at the time when he was your immediate superior or at another period? Can you specify the year?
Thank you, Judge Lavenge. I made a mistake. The date is 15 August 1977, not 78, and I made several mistakes in relation to the date. My apology.
Donc si je comprends bien...
So if I understand your testimony correctly, when you accompanied Pang to the Ministry of Commerce, he was not your immediate supervisor at the time. He was not the head of S21 at the time. Is that correct?
He had the authority to instruct me when he became my immediate supervisor on behalf of Brother Nguyen and Brother Paul. So he was my immediate supervisor.
Mais ça, c'était le 15 août 77?
And was that on the 15th of August 1977?
President, please wait. Witness, you may proceed, Judge Lavagna.
Oui, je suis pas sûr.
Yes. I am not sure we understand the situation clearly in light of what the witness said. I have understood that the witness stated that as of the 15th of August 1977, Son Sen went to the battlefront and Nunchia became his supervisor, and Nunchia designated Pang to be his intermediary, so to speak. And from that time onward, Pang was in charge of supervising the work at S21. Perhaps I didn't understand that, and it may well be that we need a clarification by the witness. Counsel Gise, witness, you have heard the discussion and the request for you to clarify this matter. Was Pang your supervisor at S21 throughout the period when you said Nuon Chea replaced Son Sen, or Pang, as I had understood from your prior statement, was your immediate superior when Nuon Chea traveled to China? Can you please clarify this matter?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Judge Labange understanding is better than the counsel. Pang came to supervise me and Lin. And Pang at the time was the chief of a defense unit for Pol, and Pang was the spokesperson for Pol Pot. He came to supervise me, but my top supervisor was Uncle Nuon from 15 August 1977. So at first Pang came to supervise me as well. He was my immediate supervisor, and after Pang arrest, Lin became my immediate supervisor.
Je vais revenir tout à l'heure, mais
I'll revisit the point subsequently. Regarding the dates, can you specify on what date Pang was arrested?
I am not certain, but I would like to recall an event that was when Wand conveyed the message from Uncle Nuon to arrest Pang, and the venue which was in used for the celebration of the victory was not yet dismantled at the time. And that was after 30th September 1977, not 78, to my recollection.
donc l'arrestation.
So, if I understood your testimony, Pang was arrested after the 30th of September 1977. That is before 1978. Did I properly understand your testimony, or I am wrong?
It was before that date and year. Let me think. I'm not sure. I am confused now. I'm sorry, I am confused now. I do not know whether it happened in 1977 or 78. In June 1978, Brother Phum was arrested, and the arrest of Pang happened before Brother Phum's arrest. So I am confused with the date. I cannot recall it well, and the date could be found in the list of names arrested.
Nous y reviendrons tout à l'heure.
We'll return to the issue of the arrest of Pang subsequently. That will give you the time to try to jog your memory, and we'll return to that later. For the time being, let us talk about your work at S21, and I would like us to talk about the process whereby prisoners were brought in to S21 in answer to questions put to you by Counsel Kope and Judge Laveng, you referred to Susi at S21. Can you tell the chamber what was that person's exact role?
Mr. President, Comrade T was in charge of list of incoming and outgoing prisoners, so the lists were under his control.
Vous avez indiqué, et lui aussi,
You said before this chamber, and he confirmed it as well, that he was in charge of the ordinary prisoner lists, but with regard to important people, he was not dealing with that. So is that what happened?
Mr. President, I think that is the correct statement by T if he said so. I have informed the chamber on a continual basis. Some important prisoners were not known by Comrade T when they arrived. T learned about the arrival of those important prisoners only after a period of time, and I do not know who was in charge of the important prisoners lists.
je voudrais...
With the leave of the President, I would like to provide a document to you that was shown to you by Judge Lavergne. This is document E3/1051, 10521, corrects the interpreter. And with the President's leave, I would like to provide a Khmer copy of this document to the witness so that he may know which document I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, you may proceed.
Est-ce que vous voyez le...
Does this remind you of the document that Judge Lavergne showed to you 2 days ago? This document was also shown to Susti by Judge Lavergne again at the hearing of 16 June 2016. And he spoke about this document a little bit after 2:04 in the afternoon. And the question that was put to him by Judge Lavergne was the following. Does this document come from S21, or does it come from elsewhere? And at 2:06 and 9 seconds, Susti answered, I do not know where this document comes from. Had it existed, Duke would have had it in his possession. End of quote. And now I would like to refer you to other statements made by Susti.
Witness, please hold on, and International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, just to request, could you identify the document again? It didn't come through in the English translation very well, so what the E3 number is, and thanks.
Yep.
No problem. This is document E3/10521. So Susti did not recognize this document, but I understood that you assumed that this document could be the result of Susti's work. when Susti testified before this chamber, he said that when he would receive or when he would see the prisoners for the first time, he would only ask them very basic summary questions, that is to say their name, their occupation, etc., and the rest was dealt with by the interrogators. So my question is, in this admission process, does this ring a bell? Do you know if Susti only would put very basic questions to the prisoners arriving, and later on the interrogators would take their time to obtain more detailed information from the prisoners?
Regarding the general work of Suti, it was what he did. That is to ask about a brief biography, gender, age, and the unit they came from. And he did not ask any deeper questions than that. And that is the general work of Suti, who was in charge of the list. So it has to be clear of the entry date of those prisoners. As for important prisoners, he could not have the full details. Regarding this document from its date, that is, they were arrested on 12 December 75 and sent to S21 on the 6th May 76.
My apologies, witness. I was not interested in the content of the document. I just wanted you to have it before you so that you may know what I'm talking about. But you already brought up quite a few elements with Judge Laverne, and I don't need to get back to that. Thank you. I see, President, that it's soon time for the break. Would you like me to stop now?
Counsel, I actually want you to hear the response of the witness in its fullness, as he started to speak about the origin of this document and who produced it. And suddenly you interrupted. This is a complicated case, and the facts involved were about 40 years ago, so it is rather difficult for the witness to respond quickly to your question. And if you keep interrupting the witness, then it seems that he's not in a good morale to respond to your question in full. And I observe that he is reading the format of the document. Witness, thank you, Mr. President. This document mentions that those people were arrested on 12 December 1975 and were sent to S21 on 6 May 76. And what about the source of those who sent them to S21? Who were they? I was at S21 in December 75 as a deputy chief. But here there is no indication of the person who sends them over to S21. For that reason, I do not know the source of this document at all. President, thank you. It is now appropriate for a short break. We'll take a break now and resume at 10:30 to continue our proceedings. Court officer, please assist the witness at the waiting room reserved for witnesses and civil parties, and invite him back into the courtroom at 10:30. The court is now in recess.